The glass doors of Seoul City Hall swung open, and Ayira stumbled backward as two massive men in black suits bowed low before her. Their synchronized movement made her heart lurch. "Mrs. Rhee, your car is ready." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Ayira's fingers tightened around the handle of her battered suitcase, her only possession in the world. The bruise on her left cheekbone throbbed where her aunt had struck her that morning, just hours before she'd finally escaped. "I think you have the wrong person," she whispered, her voice cracking. Behind the bodyguards, a figure emerged from a sleek black Mercedes. The man moved with the predatory grace of a panther, his tailored charcoal suit fitting him like a second skin. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and cold beauty. But it was his eyes that froze her in place, dark and penetrating, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. A tattoo peeked from beneath his collar, snaking up the side of his neck. Dragon scales, she realized. Her stomach dropped. "You signed the contract," he said, his voice low and dangerous, each word precisely enunciated. He held up a document, her signature glaring at her from the bottom of the page. Ayira's vision blurred as she stared at the paper. That wasn't what she'd signed. She'd come here to finalize paperwork for a freelance translation job. Her ticket to independence after 17 years of hell. The clerk had been rushing, pushing papers at her, telling her to sign quickly because they were closing soon. "That's not mine. I mean, that's my signature, but I didn't sign a marriage certificate. I was signing employment papers." The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. Assessment. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, more primal. "Jae-Min Rhee," he introduced himself, though it sounded more like a threat than a greeting. "And as of 47 minutes ago, I'm your husband." The world tilted. Ayira's knees buckled, and she would have collapsed if one of the bodyguards hadn't caught her elbow. Her mind raced, trying to piece together what had happened. The nervous clerk, the way he'd shuffled papers, the couple arguing behind her in line about their arrangement. "This is a mistake," she breathed. "Please, there's been a terrible mistake." "Mistakes have consequences," Jae-Min said, his gaze dropping to the bruise on her face. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Get in the car. We'll discuss this somewhere private." "I'm not going anywhere with you. I don't even know you." He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. In the bright afternoon sunlight, she could see every detail of his face, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the dangerous curve of his mouth, the absolute absence of warmth in his expression. "You have two choices," he said quietly. "Come with me now, or my men will carry you. Either way, you're leaving here as Mrs. Rhee. The paperwork is legal, the marriage is binding, and someone went through a lot of trouble to make this happen." Ayira's breath came in short gasps. She thought of her aunt's house, the locked room where she'd slept on the floor, the bruises that covered her ribs beneath her thin blouse. She thought of the 17 years she'd spent as an unpaid servant, working off her dead parents' debts that somehow never decreased, no matter how hard she worked. She'd escaped this morning with nothing but the clothes on her back and a suitcase containing 3 changes of clothing and her mother's necklace. She had nowhere to go, no money, no friends. She'd planned to start her new job next week, save everyone, and disappear into anonymity. Instead, she'd accidentally married a man who looked like he could kill her with his bare hands and not lose a moment's sleep. "Who are you?" she asked, though part of her already knew. The tattoo, the bodyguards, the way people in the parking lot gave his car a wide berth. "Someone you shouldn't have married," he replied. "But here we are." His hand closed around her upper arm, not painfully but with unmistakable authority, and he guided her toward the Mercedes. The bodyguards flanked them, creating a human shield. People stared as they passed, smartphones appearing, recording the scene. Ayira's mind screamed at her to run, but her body moved forward mechanically. Where would she run to? Her aunt would find her within days. and something in Jae-Min's voice beneath the threat suggested he was telling the truth. Someone had orchestrated this, but who and why? The car's leather interior was cool against her skin as she slid into the back seat. Jae-Min settled beside her, maintaining a careful distance, and the door closed with an expensive thunk. The world outside became muted, filtered through tinted windows. "Tell me everything," he commanded as the car pulled into traffic. "Start with why you have bruises covering your arms." Ayira's hands instinctively tugged at her sleeves. She hadn't realized they'd ridden up. "That's none of your business. You became my business the moment you signed that paper. Accidentally or not, you're now connected to me. My enemies will see you as leverage. My allies will see you as a liability, and I need to know if you're part of whatever scheme is unfolding." "I'm not part of any scheme," Ayira said, her voice stronger now, despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I came to City Hall to sign papers for a translation job, that's all. The clerk was rushing me, and I signed without reading everything carefully. I trusted that the documents in front of me were what they said they were." Jae-Min's fingers drummed against his knee, a rhythmic pattern that somehow felt threatening. "What translation company?" "Hansung Global. They hired me to translate business documents from English and Japanese. It was supposed to start next Monday." He pulled out his phone, pressed a single button, and spoke without preamble. "Check Hansung Global Translation Services. I want their client list, ownership structure, and any connection to the Rhee family within the hour." He ended the call and turned back to her. "If you're telling the truth, we'll know soon enough. And if I am telling the truth, will you let me go?" His laugh was short and humorless. "Let you go? You don't understand what you've walked into. I was supposed to marry someone else today. A woman who would protect certain business interests and keep certain people from asking too many questions about my operations. That woman disappeared 2 hours before the ceremony, and somehow, miraculously, you appeared in her place." The car climbed into the hills overlooking Seoul, the city sprawling below them in the afternoon haze. Ayira's heart hammered as they turned onto a private road lined with cherry trees. Then the mansion came into view, and her breath caught. It was a masterpiece of glass and steel, cantilevered over the edge of a cliff, seeming to float above the valley below. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, making the structure glow like a jewel, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Welcome home, Mrs. Rhee," Jae-Min said, and the words felt like a prison sentence. The car stopped at the entrance, and the bodyguards opened the doors. Inside, the mansion was even more spectacular. Polished marble floors, modern art on pristine white walls, furniture that probably cost more than most people earned in a year, but it felt cold, sterile, like a beautiful mausoleum. A woman in her 50s approached, her expression carefully neutral. "Sir, we weren't expecting a guest." "She's not a guest, she's my wife. Prepare the East Wing guest suite." Jae-Min's tone brooked no argument. The woman's eyes widened fractionally before she bowed. "Of course, sir, right away." As she hurried off, 3 men in dark suits entered the foyer. They were younger than the bodyguards, but carried themselves with the same dangerous competence. One of them, tall with a scar running down his cheek, stared at Ayira with undisguised hostility. "Boss, we need to talk," he said. "Privately." Jae-Min nodded toward a door off the main hall. "Wait in my study. I'll be there shortly." He turned to Ayira. "Mrs. Kang will show you to your room. Stay there until I send for you. Don't try to leave. There are guards at every exit, and the property is surrounded by a 10-foot wall with sensors." "So I'm a prisoner," Ayira said flatly. "You're protected. There's a difference. Until I know who arranged this and why, you're safer here than anywhere else in Seoul." He walked away without waiting for a response, his men following like shadows. Mrs. Kang reappeared and gestured toward a sweeping staircase. "This way, please." The guest suite was larger than her aunt's entire house. The bedroom alone could have fit 3 of her old sleeping spaces. A king-sized bed dominated the room, dressed in silk sheets, that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens and the city beyond. "There are clothes in the closet," Mrs. Kang said. "Mr. Rhee keeps guest wardrobes in various sizes. Dinner is at 7. Someone will come to escort you." She paused at the door. "A word of advice, Mrs. Rhee. Don't trust anyone in this house, including me." The door closed with a soft click, and Ayira was alone. She set her suitcase down and sank onto the bed, her hands trembling now that there was no one to see. What had she done? She'd escaped one prison only to land in another, this one infinitely more dangerous. She thought about the man downstairs, Jae-Min Rhee. Even his name carried weight. She'd heard rumors about the Rhee family, whispered conversations in the market, news reports that never quite told the whole story. They owned half of Seoul's commercial district, controlled shipping routes, had politicians in their pocket. And beneath it all, shadows, the kind of shadows that made people disappear. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She opened the door to find one of the bodyguards holding a medical kit. "Mr. Rhee requests that you allow me to check your injuries." "I'm fine." "That wasn't a request, Mrs. Rhee." She let him in, too exhausted to fight. He worked efficiently, cleaning the cut on her cheek, checking her ribs with professional detachment. When he pushed up her sleeve to examine her arm, she saw his jaw tighten at the pattern of bruises, finger marks, some old, some new. "Who did this?" he asked quietly. "Does it matter?" "Mr. Rhee doesn't tolerate violence against women, especially not his wife." "I'm not really his wife. This is all a mistake." The bodyguard packed up his kit. "The law says you are, and in Mr. Rhee's world, that means something. Whatever brought you here, accidentally or not, you're under his protection now. That's not something given lightly." After he left, Ayira stood on the balcony and watched the sun dip toward the horizon. Somewhere in the house below, she could hear raised voices. She caught fragments through the open windows, angry words in Korean. Jae-Min's voice cutting through the others like a blade. "I don't care what the plan was. She's here now, and she stays until we know who's behind this." She could be working with Sung-ho. This could all be part of his scheme too. If she were part of a scheme, she'd be a better actress. "Did you see her face? She's terrified, and those bruises aren't makeup. Boss, with respect, your brother has been planning something for months. The original bride disappearing, this girl appearing exactly when needed. It's too convenient." Silence fell, heavy and ominous. Then Jae-Min spoke again, his voice dropping to a register that made Ayira's blood run cold. "Run a full background check. I want to know everything about her. Where she lived, who she lived with, every connection she has. And find out what happened to the original bride. Someone paid that clerk to switch those papers, and I want to know who." Ayira stepped back from the balcony, her heart racing. His brother. Sung-ho. The name meant nothing to her, but clearly it meant everything to the men downstairs. She paced the room, her mind spinning with implications. If Jae-Min's own brother had orchestrated this, then she was caught in a family war she didn't understand. The hours crawled by. At 7 o'clock sharp, Mrs. Kang appeared to escort her to dinner. The dining room was as cold and beautiful as the rest of the house, dominated by a glass table that reflected the chandelier above like captured stars. Jae-Min sat at the head, changed now into a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing more of the dragon tattoo that wound around his forearm. He gestured to the chair beside him, not at the far end as she'd expected, but close, intimate. The message was clear. To anyone watching, they were a united front. "I hope the room is satisfactory," he said, as Mrs. Kang began serving the meal. His tone was polite, almost cordial, but his eyes remained sharp, assessing. "It's more than satisfactory. It's excessive." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You'll find I do nothing in half measures." He waited until Mrs. Kang left before continuing. "Hansung Global Translation Services doesn't exist. The company registration was filed 3 weeks ago with a false address and fake credentials. The job offer you received was bait. Ayira's chopsticks clattered against her plate. That's impossible. I interviewed. I met with someone. A woman named Park Ji-won. Park Ji-won is an alias. The woman who interviewed you was likely hired specifically to lure you to City Hall today. Someone wanted you in that building at that exact time. He took a sip of wine, watching her over the rim of the glass. Tell me about your aunt. The abrupt change of subject threw her. What does she have to do with this? Everything is connected. Those bruises didn't appear by magic. You said you escaped this morning. From what? Ayira set down her chopsticks, her appetite gone. My parents died when I was 8. My aunt took me in, said she'd care for me. Instead, she made me work off their debts. 17 years of cooking, cleaning, doing her accounting, running her shop. She never let me go to university. Never let me have friends. If I complained, she reminded me that I owed her for food and shelter. And the bruises. When I tried to leave before, she stopped me. Violently. Ayira's voice shook, despite her efforts to control it. This morning, I found her financial records. There was no debt. My parents left money. A lot of money she'd been stealing from me for 17 years. So I took what I could carry and ran. Jae-Min's expression darkened. What's her name? Why? Because no one touches my wife and walks away unpunished. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her, but instead something warm unfurled in her chest. No one had ever defended her before. I'm not really your wife. The law disagrees, and in my world, that's all that matters. He pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. The headline made her stomach drop. Business mogul Jae-Min Rhee marries in surprise ceremony. There was a photo, the two of them outside City Hall, his hand on her arm, her face frozen in shock. She looked tiny beside him, fragile and out of place. This is everywhere, he said. Every news site, every social media platform. By now, your aunt has seen it, and if my suspicions are correct, so has my brother. As if summoned by his words, the doors to the dining room burst open. A man strode in, younger than Jae-Min, but with similar features. The same sharp jaw, the same dark eyes. But where Jae-Min exuded controlled danger, this man radiated barely contained fury. What have you done? Sung-ho demanded. Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed? Jae-Min didn't rise, didn't even tense. He simply continued eating. Hello, brother. How thoughtful of you to join us for dinner. This isn't a joke. That woman was supposed to secure our alliance with the Kim family. Without that marriage, the deal falls apart. And you replaced her with this nobody? He jabbed a finger at Ayira. Careful, Jae-Min said softly. That's my wife you're insulting. Your wife? You married her by accident. The wrong woman signed the wrong papers because some incompetent clerk mixed up the documents. This can be annulled. It has to be. Ayira watched the exchange with growing dread. The pieces were falling into place. Sung-ho had arranged the original marriage. He'd stood to gain something from it. And now she'd inadvertently destroyed his plans. Annulment requires both parties to agree, Jae-Min said. I don't agree. Sung-ho's face flushed red. You're choosing this girl over the family business? Over everything we've built? I'm choosing to discover who orchestrated this before I make any decisions. Someone paid that clerk. Someone created a fake translation company to lure Ayira to City Hall at the exact time the marriage was scheduled. Someone made the original bride disappear. Jae-Min leaned back in his chair, his gaze locked on his brother. And I'm beginning to suspect that someone is you. The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Sung-ho's expression shifted. Shock, then calculation, then barely concealed rage. You've lost your mind. Why would I sabotage my own plan? Because the plan was never about securing an alliance. It was about destroying me. The Kim family bride was a setup, wasn't she? What was it going to be? Photos of me with an underage girl? Evidence of human trafficking? Something bad enough to force me out and put you in control? Sung-ho took a step back. his mask slipping. You're paranoid. Am I? Then explain why the bride disappeared exactly 2 hours before the ceremony. Explain why Ayira received a job offer from a company that doesn't exist. Explain why the clerk who mixed up the documents vanished from City Hall and hasn't been seen since. You can't prove any of this. Not yet, but I will. Jae-Min stood, and suddenly the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Until then, Ayira stays. She's under my protection. And if anything happens to her, if she so much as trips on a staircase, I'll know exactly where to look. Sung-ho's jaw clenched. This isn't over. No, Jae-Min agreed. It's just beginning. After Sung-ho left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the chandelier, Ayira found her voice. He's going to kill me, isn't he? Jae-Min returned to his seat, his expression unreadable. He's going to try, but he'll have to go through me first. He reached across the table and with surprising gentleness lifted her chin so she had to meet his eyes. I don't know why fate put you in my path today, Ayira, but you're here now and that means something. In my world, loyalty is everything. You didn't betray me, even accidentally. That's rare. I don't want to be part of your world. Too late. The moment you signed that paper, you became part of it. But I promise you this, no one will hurt you again. Not your aunt, not my brother, not anyone. His thumb brushed across the bruise on her cheek, and for a moment she saw something human beneath the Mafia boss exterior. You've been surviving your whole life. Let me teach you how to fight back. Ayira just accidentally married a Mafia boss, and his brother wants her dead. You know this is about to get wild. Don't miss the next move. Hit that subscribe button now.